Intersection Magazine Podcast.
Welcome to Intersection Magazine Podcast. In this second quarter of the year, we are going through April, May and June parts of the magazine. So what we decided to do was to create some audio summaries of our magazine for those who can't afford to subscribe, or who would find it difficult to read, find time to read what we put in the magazine. And so for April we covered social capital, and this was the second piece from an article by Alex Danco, Social Capital in Silicon Valley. The second thing we talked about was loans and telcos, and I identified, I think it was two particular systems that exist within Airtel and MTN. Those are two of our most popular telco providers in Uganda, and that provide small loans for the clientele. So I cover my perspectives on usage and also just a little bit about interest payments and timelines and things of that nature. The second part is Web3 Wallets and some conversations about which Web3 wallet you should use. The third is a question and answer with a writer I met called Luke Sheehan. He was featured, I suppose, in the March part of the magazine. So he wrote an article for someone in the tech and innovation ecosystem in Uganda. So I thought it would be interesting to have a conversation with him too. So that's really the month of April. So in the next section we'll do a bit of a deep dive into what we covered in the magazine. So thank you for subscribing, and thank you for listening. So in the first part of the magazine I of course feature a section about our web hosting and web design services, as well as the option that listeners can have, or anybody who can have, to learn with me or with us about how to design web pages. You can learn this through what I call first principles, where you learn the code, where you can use what you see is what you get editors. Most people who get into web development start off with basic languages like HTML, hypertext markup language, and cascading style sheets and JavaScript. And then of course there's a distinction between those who are going to be on the server side and those who are going to be on the maybe you can call it the front end, or the side that you interact with, most users interact with. Then there are different languages that you can learn for that, and so I'll take you into a bit of that, but I'll also teach you or show you how to set up your own hosting service, give you a bit of a conversation about setting up and thinking in terms of the process of design, what model should you use when working with a client, pricing, also all sorts of different options if you're designing content management systems, different tools that exist. So you're free to sign up for that if you're interested. You can get in touch with us through our socials. Then the article that I shared in about social capital and Silicon Valley is featured next. When he talks about the importance of knowing how social capital flows in Silicon Valley. And the reason why I'm interested in this article was because many ecosystems look at Silicon Valley as kind of like the mecca for businesses. I suppose just in terms of how many large companies, unicorns, have come out of the area. But if you want to also understand a little bit more about the area and the ecosystem, you also need to look into the works of, I suppose, he's Michael Portman. I might have the name wrong, but he did some work about clusters, innovation clusters, and you can look up innovation clusters on the Harvard Business Review to find out a little bit more about how businesses tend to get attracted to certain geographies. And this does not take place in a planned way, but it's usually quite organic. So that will be some useful information, but it's also useful to understand some of the other dynamics that are at play in Silicon Valley. And maybe instead of taking a deeper interest in the mechanics, where you're talking about universities, you're talking about businesses, you're talking about non-governmental organizations or civil society organizations, you're talking about universities. You can talk about how social capital as well. So those are the issues that the author tackles, Alex Danco tackles. And he also says that social capital is distributed differently than conventional power. And he quotes or goes through a passage in a book War and Peace. I really enjoyed reading that part and shared it with you. And pretty much shared the whole article here. Next section is a conversation I had or share with a group we're collaborating with. That's Founders Freedom. And they're really talking about how you can firm up the foundations of your business. So I suggest for that you look up Founders Freedom. They're based in Kenya. I featured them in a podcast last year when I visited the country, so I suggest you visit their LinkedIn page, subscribe to their LinkedIn newsletter, and connect with them for information and consulting about how to create businesses that last beyond one generation. We also have an offering for 2 books that we published for those who are interested in consulting and those who are interested in communication. The consulting book is called A Glossary of Technical Terms and Acronyms. And then there's a survival kit for effective communication, about 12 pages covering 12 months with 12 images that I've taken of sunsets, of some of the places in the place where I live, but also combine those with a survival kit that was written by a management consultant. And it's just 12 very deep, useful ideas that you can munch on for 1 month, or actually for the whole year, as you think about how to communicate better and how to get better results. You have a section where we've given you some information about how you can interact with our services, whether that's purchasing the magazine, whether that's subscribing through your email, getting ad space through us, getting social media campaigns done, and our prices are reasonable. We've also featured a business from a friend who I met through a WhatsApp group we have in Uganda, and he supplies pulses. He has worked mainly in northern Uganda. His business is called Truism, but he's also into providing financial solutions for businesses, financial and investment solutions for businesses. You might be interested in collaborating with him too. For those who are interested in strategy, I also play chess once in a while. I can provide some kind of guidance for those who are interested in the game. I'll learn a little bit more about strategy, and the game is actually split up in 3 parts: middle, opening, and end game. So we are trying to see if we can create a basic course to help people learn the game as well as advance in the game. We've also listed our web design and hosting costs for those that are interested. Split it up into basic sites and then more complex sites. We've created sites for schools, businesses, NGOs with over maybe 12 plus years experience. We have an interesting way of approaching the design process, very collaborative. Then we also go into Web3 Wallets. Those who are interested in the whole concept of Web3 can look it up. We have a podcast where we had a conversation with an engineer called David Luima. He has a hub located in a city or a place called Kansanga. David Luima helped demystify the concept of Web3 in the podcast that I had with him. This is a bit of a continuation, giving some explanation of how Web3 wallets work, what they are, some differentiations between the conventional web wallets, smart contract wallets, MPCs, and custodial wallets, and examples. And I found this information from a site online, and the piece was written by Juan Leal. Then they also distinguish between hot wallets and cold wallets, and the ins and outs of both of those. So you will benefit from this piece. I suppose I also mentioned in the article, or if I haven't, I'll make sure I put it in the notes and the show notes, for those who are interested in subscribing to this particular group, because I depended heavily on the material for this information, these definitions, as well as the graphics. I believe you might also benefit from this. Then for movie recommendation, I found something through either Twitter or X in these days, or Facebook, but I suspect it was probably Twitter. It was a bit of a continuation of some of the themes that we've been tackling over the last few months, last few years: data collection, artificial intelligence, data processing, the Internet of Things, 5G technology, to name just a few. The concept of privacy and surveillance, non-disclosure agreements, all that stuff happens in the background. But this is a film called Kimi, and it features actor and singer Lenny Kravitz's daughter, Zoe Kravitz. It's about a young lady who has a fear of leaving her house. It's actually a phobia, and how she is able to utilize the technologies that she has in her house to solve some problems, as well as identify and help solve a case, and the challenges she faces as she attempts to solve this case. So there are quite a number of themes that are covered in this film that are worth taking note of. I believe it was by HBO Max, so you might enjoy that movie as well. It features Baron Bowers, Rita Wilson, Erica Christensen, India W. Fort, and Derek Delguadio. My book recommendation was written by a Uganda author. The book is called Omugaga Afa Obwavu, which means the rich man is dying of poverty. It's a play on the concept of wealth and poverty. And it's a very useful book written by a relative of mine who grew up during colonial days in Uganda, but also managed to capture some of his thoughts about how to get young people to transition from a mentality that's dependent on handouts into a life that's full of hard work and that can benefit from society. Many interesting discussions about culture, about history. There's a bit of a sense of nostalgia as he reflects on how life was, on the influence that the colonialists had on life, interaction with the kingdom, culture, and some of the norms that have been set aside. So you might enjoy reading at least a part of that book. Hopefully we'll try and see if we can do a reprint of the book. We're trying to see if we can get into discussions with the family in this regard. There's a poster of the movie that we shared. I usually devote 2 pages to a movie recommendation or summary. Then your last 4 months are also covered. January I talked about tech events in 2023, mental health and wellness. I shared a piece from Founders Freedom where they give us some mindsets to help in the process of business or financial freedom. We did in February the introduction to Linux. We continued the tech event summary for 2023, continued mental health and wellness, shared a piece by Founders Freedom, had an interview with Jimmy Ouni of Truism. The ad we shared in the April magazine was from his company, so you might enjoy reading the interview we had with Jimmy Ouni. Then we had some conversations about what we see happening in crypto this year and maybe the year that's coming. We also had in March the intro to Linux, the East African Private Capital Industry Survey of 2023, mental health and wellness. We shared a piece by Founders Freedom on finding the right tools for your business, and then an interview with Jonathan Lubwama of Venue Capital. Then April is what we're discussing right now. Now, in the piece about loan service provision and telcos, what I was trying to do is give you a rough idea of what's at stake in terms of the 2 major players in the sector, that's Airtel and MTN. So we started off with a conversation about how they've been very active in the advertising space, and how the Airtel teams were doing quite a lot of work before, but there was actually a merger between Airtel and another provider before. So there have been quite a lot of changes in the telco sector. But now what we have is MTN doing quite a lot with their advertising, making quite some attractive local content. We've had very memorable ads from MTN, so the battle is really on. Talked about some competitors that are coming into the space. They're providing quite affordable data rates and that are looking to get into the mobile money space as well. Then the subject of this article, which was loans. Some of the services I attempted were a little bit too complex to access, so I ended up preferring two services, one for MTN and one for Airtel. So I'll name those in the article. Registration, how they gauge your the idea that you will pay back the loan, or if you're loan worthy, or if your credit score, so that also comes up. I think it would be interesting to see if at some point telcos can get into a partnership with government to talk about maybe taxation. More money is probably moving through mobile accounts than it is banks. Although the challenge is there's a general sense of exhaustion at a small, low-earning population that seems to be heavily taxed as government attempts to expand its taxation base. We also talk about regulation, on how there's a bit of a challenge understanding how to tax a telco company that is making plays in the banking sector. This is probably the same challenge that government faces with cryptocurrencies, which are by definition dependent on a decentralized technology and platform. I wanted to have a conversation with someone who's been in writing as a copywriter for a while, and so that's why I shared the piece with Mr. Sheehan from Ireland. Interested in his perspectives as a quote-unquote outsider, what he thinks we're missing, what he thinks we can work on as a technology and innovation ecosystem, which countries he thinks stand out, those kinds of issues. So you might enjoy reading that as well. I also share a poem, a bit of a change because I've been mainly sharing portions of scripture, but I'm trying to see if I could reawaken the poet. Bit of advertising for an American company, and then some mentions of Hope First Bakery, which is something that I started, part of Hope First Group or Hope First Enterprises. We've been doing snacks for a while now, experimenting different options from pies to pizza to cinnamon rolls to cupcakes to large cakes. Some of our projects are more seasonal, but that's pretty much what we do under Hope First Bakery. So you can find us on X at Hope First Bakery, HOPEFIRST Bakery. In the future, you will have some conversations about data. We'll have some conversations about where we see cryptocurrency going, with exchanges, how to make money on using cryptocurrencies. That's coming the month of May. So we look forward to sharing that with you as you listen. So thank you once again for subscribing and for listening to this audio summary of the Intersection magazine that we publish every month, and that you can subscribe to for just $24, or the equivalent of 89,000 Uganda shillings per year, for 12 issues sent to your WhatsApp or to your email. And for those who are thinking of getting access to this through the web, we might eventually think about putting that or making that available, but that's still a process in the works. Once again, thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing.